What's going on, everybody? So today I have brought on our resident king of all classes, DM Diablo
Oh,
Immortal, to
wow.
talk about a little bit of class changing because I see a new problem arising here with the recent update. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, man. I think I know where you're going with this.
So I've thought about changing classes recently. As we know, there's a huge issue with changing classes in set items. You and I have experiencing this like throughout months and months and months. I remember farming a 800, 900 dungeons in a row, swapping classes and then losing all my set items. And so the best time is to do it right before, or I guess far before the hell difficulty changes, which is probably why you class change. Is that right?
Yeah, I typically like to swap between the strength or intelligence classes at least right before a hell one. So if I'm intelligence and I'm going to a different hell difficulty, I swap. So if I'm strength, I go to intel. If I'm intel, I go to strength, and that's what just happened.
Yeah, so I made that swap myself from Demon Hunter to Wizard because I think Wizard's just the most fun. It's the same thing with you and Necro. I keep going back to Wizard because I think it's crazy
I've
fun.
noticed that. Play a lot of wizard. I saw your video about the attack speed, by the way.
Yo, it's been crazy fun. Someone commented on that one and they were like, dude, they just made Wizard Demon Hunter. And I'm like, wait, you're right.
They kind of did. It's actually a pretty good
They made him really fast and lots of attacks. And that kind of brings me to the next point, actually, which is all about builds and the new essence transfer system. Have you had trouble getting this essence mastery system up for you?
I don't know if I'd say trouble. I just say it's going to take a while because of the way I class changed. Like, I'm 2.5 on Necro. Like, I'm about to hit the third one. So I've gained, like, 75 essences or something. Okay, to give you an idea. Total. So that's where I'm at on the Necro. Well, because I class changed, now I'm gaining essences again for the Crusader. But the thing is because the Crusader I didn't have the essences for already, like, I have to get the essences and then get the duplicates of them again. So, which is fine. I mean, that's just part of the game. It's more content to do. It's more things to make videos on. I'm not upset by the fact that there's an essence mastery system. I did notice that what's cool is your bar progress gets saved. So I was 8 out of 30 for the third one on the Necromancer, and then when I swapped, all my gear became reserve gear, so it unequipped all my current gear. But what happened is when my stuff became reserve gear and I had all this Necromancer gear I couldn't do anything with, I was able to go and extract that gear then from the essence thing and get like 6 more essences basically, or work towards 6 more essences. And it kept the progress of the bar. So that green bar doesn't get deleted or reset or whatever when you class change. And you can even extract stuff that aren't from the correct class. Like if you have monk legendaries because you were monk last class or something, you forgot to crunch them first. Like you can swap over and still extract those legendaries. So they did kind of think ahead in terms of, is this really going to frustrate the people? I would say the only thing it does is make it where you just got to grind more legendaries if you want to be maxed out.
That's actually crazy to me. Because you're saying that, immediately what I thought of is people still have the free class change because they don't class change. If you're a casual player, what's stopping you? I think this is like a viable strategy. Just swap to another class. You don't have to extract 3 or 4 pieces on your last bar. Get that bar up to 29, swap back, and then just get that final piece of experience to get you over to that level 3.
Yeah, technically you can swap classes and then swap back and extract your own gear, and they will basically clone your gear with reserve gear. That is something you can do. It's sort of the same strategy of like cloning your ring that we've talked about before. You can do that. It's not really something I think I would recommend, because the problem with that is like having the revert is super, super nice for when you pick a class you just really don't want to play. And if you're casual, you probably haven't played all 6 classes, so you don't know what classes you're going to want yet. And when you pick a class and you're like, wow, Barbarian's a stinker, like I'm just really not enjoying the game, it's literally a quitting moment for people. Like people will just quit the game and not come back. Like if they have to wait a week, they'll just forget about the game. If you're super casual, they'll be like, oh, well, I'm 100 Paragon, been playing it a little bit. This class is super boring. My last experience with the game wasn't good. It takes a week for me to get back to my other class. I'm just done. And they're just not going to play again. So it'd be hard for me to recommend it, I think.
Yeah, and this is kind of the same process that we went through when class change came out, and we were wondering how the essences were going to work, right? Because we were curious, are we going to have to refarm all this? And a lot of the sentiment, including, my own, was like, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing for the majority of players. But personally, at least for me, I thought that was actually a bonus. Like, it's actually made me want to class change more. I don't know if that's kind of what you felt as well.
It's made me want to look into the classes more and figure out. I think what it's done is the correct thing I want to see, which is think about builds more. I think the biggest problem in it more, though, for me personally, is that builds are somewhat uninspired. You very rarely see somebody like, here's a totally new build in a totally new way. That's a totally new concept. Normally it's like, okay, here's a summon build, but this gem's better. Here's this, but I use these reforges, or whatever. Like, there's not really that giant variety in builds. And if there were seasons in this game, they would be extremely boring because every single season would be the exact same thing again. You would just min-max the same best build. So they're not really having like these giant seasonal swings of variety of, oh, well, this season is 50% more dot damage or whatever. Like, that stuff doesn't happen in order to make builds viable. So having the essence system where it kind of shakes things up, I saw it almost as like the Dota change back in the day, where they're just like, hey, we're gonna take all the items and make them more crazy, and instead of trying to balance like every single item is this one's better than this one by 3% too much or whatever, we're just gonna make everything insane and just let the people figure it out. I actually kind of think that strategy is kind of interesting. There's counterpoints to that, but that's where I'm at with it in my head.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where Diablo Immortal has gone, right? They don't even bother balancing classes for the most part. I mean, I think literally Wizard and Monk are the only classes that have gotten any sort of actual balance changing. And then they just add more legendary items and keep making it like, oh, if something crazy happens, like, it just happens. And I agree with you. Every single time I swap to a new class, I'm sitting there and it takes me a week or two as you're farming all those legendary items. You're looking through the classes, you're figuring out what to actually kind of combo with, because it's not necessarily an easy process. I mean, we've been playing this game for, as we said, 8 months, and we're kind of used to it at this point. But when you swap to a new class, you realize, wait a second, like, there's a lot of items here. There's 10 per slot, 6 slots. How am I going to combo that with my skills? And I agree. I think it does lend itself to kind of a more interesting theory crafting perspective when you do swap classes. So let me ask you this final question.
All right.
Are you enjoying the Crusader more than the last time you swapped to it?
No. Honestly, no. Like, here's the problem, okay? It's the horse is the problem for me. So I have the electric horse, which is supposed to be like the good one. This is my only pair of pants, okay? I looked out. The Arrow Keeper was my first and only helmet. The pants were the electric horse and were my first and only pants. I'm getting like all the legendaries you're supposed to have, basically. There's a problem when you play on PC with the horse. If you hold the space bar, and which you have to, because if you use the right click in order to attack while you're moving with the horse, it will just stop moving and will take you to that guy. Like, you have to click on somebody in order to attack. You can't just hold down the right button and have it attack unless you change your settings, etc. So what you have to do is you're like, okay, well, I'll just hold the space bar, as that will make me continue attacking. I can run through my mobs. Well, the problem with that is, for some reason, when you hold the space bar, it makes your horse follow where your mouse cursor is, but you can't move your character. I mean, you can move your character, but it will stop moving on the attack if you don't use WASD at the same time. So you have to use WASD to tell the game that you're moving your character. You have to hold the space bar to make him attack, and you can't use the mouse button to hold the attack, and then you also have to point the mouse. So you have to point the mouse to move him, the space bar to hold the attack. You can't use the mouse for some reason, or it's going to fuck it up. And then at the same time, you have to use WASD, which isn't following which way the WASD says to go. It will only follow your mouse. So you're hitting right and it's going left. And it's just, it's so uncomfortable. And I have such bad like carpal tunnel in my left arm in particular, that it's like almost physically painful to play. Maybe I'm whining here a bit, or maybe there's some setting I haven't figured out, but it feels absolutely miserable to play the horse anyway.
When I started playing Diablo Immortal, they released it early on the phone, which I was so annoyed because it's basically the only time I played on my phone. But I was playing the Crusader on my phone, and it's really easy on your phone. You can move, and then you just hit the attack, right? As you're saying, you don't have to worry about going towards a character or aiming your horse or whatever. You move to the PC, and the first thing I said when I went to the PC, I was like, Crusader's literally not playable.
You've had this with the horse too? I'm not the only one?
I had this problem, and because I was forced on the Crusader, there was no class change. I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna have to deal with it and figure it out. but there's no good solution. The only thing that I've done is I just WASD, and then if I'm near an enemy, I right click. But you can't pre-fire your
Wait,
basics
so
or anything.
this isn't like I fucked it up? This
Nope,
is like
this
an
is
actual
just-
problem?
Crusader sucks on PC from
No,
a control standpoint.
I didn't want to even call it like call it out too hard, because I was thinking like, okay, it's just, someone's gonna be like, you're a boomer and you gotta get your settings right or something. But if it's legitimate, like you're having the same fucking problem, and for whatever reason, I don't know what they were thinking when they designed the horse that way. It's like the second you hit attack, suddenly your character's going a random way. Like, it doesn't make any it's really, really clunky. I mean, on computer, the move is like, wow, this move's really good, but I don't even want to use it. I mean, it's physically painful for my left arm to do, and it's also extremely weird. Like, I have to do this claw hand where it's like WASD to get and then press down the thumb the whole time. And of course, the left part of my space bar is broken on my keyboard, so I have to push it on the far right side. So I'm doing this fucking claw that's like I'm trying to do like this certain chord on a guitar or something. And it's just burning my arm, bro. I can't do it.
You guys can see what the motions are looking like over there. It's crazy. Yeah, I've mentioned this in the first couple of weeks of me, because I did do some streaming for Diablo Immortal. That was my #1 complaint. I basically mentioned it every single time I possibly could. You can get used to it, but that doesn't mean that it's still optimal. Like, even if, like, let's say you wanted to run a Shell boss set, you can't like auto on your horse charging into battle to stack up your attack speed or whatever in PvP if you decide to use horse there. It's just there's so many different situations where either it's super clunky and awkward, or it's just worse on PC. It's one of the few things that the PC client, in terms of controls, does absolutely horrifically. There's a few other ones for sure.
And there's a few things I don't like about the Crusader. Like, the Holy Banner with Arrow Keeper is awesome, but it's like, why do I have to stop and go, ha-ha-za, to turn it on? Like, just let me move and activate it. It's not really that big of a deal. Like, I feel the same way about other buff related moves. Like, I don't like this casting animation. I know attack speed effects and everything, but when it doesn't do anything, you're just activating a buff on yourself. I hate that my character has to stop walking to go huzzah for like 2 seconds in order to do the move. It's like, just flip on the Arrow Keeper and keep walking. Like, you don't have to stutter. So stuff like that kind of bothers me. The Crusader just feels like infinitely clunky, and it could be the case scenario where it's like the Barbarian, where it's like, okay, give it some time, which I'm going to have to because I don't have my class revert anyway, like I did for the Barb. Give it some time, do some PvP, talk to some people that play a lot of Crusader, figure it out, ignore Kitty Cat, who's always in the way. There you go, Kitty. There you go, up on the chair. And then try again, but... That's
just... it's absurdly annoying. And as you say about that, as you guys can see on the screen, this ability right here, I can just cast it and it just summons the orb. And then the Scorch here, it takes a second. Like, my guy is like pulling down the sky, summoning the Scorch orb, stopping for a second. But yeah, I get everything that you're saying here about the Crusader in terms of clunkiness. And they are more of kind of pigeonholed into a couple of abilities that I think are just absurdly better than a lot of their other abilities. So I get it if you're not feeling the Crusader.
It's not that I hate the Crusader. I just think the Crusader deserves better love. Like, it's like, hey, this class has obviously been ignored. Like, there's some glaring problems, is how I feel about it. It's like, okay, well, it could be a pretty cool class, but they made it extremely clunky. Like, that's the way I feel. It feels more... Barbarian feels way smoother. And that's bad to say. If you're the most clunky melee class in Diablo Immortal, that's a bummer. It could also be, like, again, it could just be lack of experience. I could have a lot. I'm sure there's some Crusaders out there like, yeah, you don't know what you're doing. You just got to get this. And like, yeah, sure, I'm sure you're right. But, when you're just started, like, it feels pretty brutal when you just started. And I think that the other problem, too, is, like, going back to the class essence thing, like, when you swap classes, it's the most unfun time in the game, in my opinion. When you play a new class, when you have no essences, it's fun to swap and then trial essences once you have them. But when you get into a new class that's fresh, your first time in, and you're playing at your current difficulty level, but with no essences, you're always going to be like, this class blows. Like, I can't do anything with this guy, and that's basically what happened to me on Barbarian the first time.
Yeah, I get it. Crusader's literally the one I played the most. Out of every class, Crusaders I played the most, because that was the time when we were grinding 16 hours a day. So I get your criticisms. They've added some more legendary items, but anytime I see the new legendary items added, when I go to Crusader, I'm always like, but does that really do anything? Like, I remember building these things, and it's like, it's just not quite as cohesive as you're saying, as things like the Barb or even the Monk, which has gotten crazy good over the past couple of months of legendary items. But thanks for your thoughts on the class change. Hopefully the Crusader gets better. And Where can everyone find you?
Where can everyone find me? All over the internets. If you type in DM or Darth Microtransaction, you're going to find me on the interwebs.
I think if you just type in best necro world, I think that's probably a better search term. But thanks for watching, everyone. See you all tomorrow.